Hello, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to this Spring Knowledge Café. We are just waiting for the arrival of the participants that are in a process of being admitted in this webinar. In 1 minute we start. Thank you everybody for joining us. And if you don't mind, we can start. I repeat this welcome to everybody to this Spring Knowledge Café. It's a tool that EASPD is using to try to talk about some issue that concerns services of persons with disabilities and their rights. And in this case, we are talking about transition to life in the community from seeds to flowers. It's a springtime. It's good to think in flowers, but we are still in the seeds. And when we say transition, means that we have not arrived yet. I want to welcome all the speakers, and in the first time I want to introduce James Crow, our president, the president of EASPD, that will introduce the Knowledge Cafe with his welcome and some words to all the participants. Please, Jim, take the floor.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We are very pleased to welcome you to this Knowledge Cafe. It is intended to do what it says in simple terms. It is an opportunity for us to learn from people working to secure independent living and to share knowledge between different experts, whether they are on our panel or amongst our participants. It seems like in many of our countries, we've talked about independent living for many years. And yet, very often, it is still a distant project, distant prospect for people with disabilities. Either because their route to independent living is blocked by society or by bureaucracy, or because they have not had the right practical help to live independently and to take the first steps. Today, we may not be able to tackle the first issue if society is putting barriers in the front of disabled people.
Honey.
But we may be able to do something through sharing together. We may be able to do something through sharing together about how disabled people can take the next step. Many people are living independently, successfully, and I'm very pleased to say that some of our speakers come from that community. It is such a powerful element in all of our lives. The need to be able to live independently is a clear desire for most of us, and one which we should not be blocked from enjoying. But yes, in many of our countries, there are difficulties, and it's very important that EASPD does, through this Knowledge Cafe and through other measures, whatever it can to assist more people with disabilities to live independently. We are the Association for Service Providers, so we do not provide the total solution. Many people can live successfully in the community without support and assistance, but there are a significant proportion of people with disabilities who do need support from service providers. And we and you, our members and our colleagues, need to step up to do this more successfully in the coming days and months and years. So I'm very pleased to be on a panel, sharing this panel with people with great expertise and insight from Hungary, from Moldova, from Romania, and also from Inclusion Europe. I look forward, alongside colleagues in participants, in listening to what we're going to hear this afternoon. Thank you for joining us, and let's have a very focused and valuable Knowledge Cafe. Thank you. Pep.
Thank you very much, Jim. To all the participants, you have to know that every question you want to send to the panelists or send that to the group, it's available to the chat or to the question and answer part. Take care of having your micro muted to don't interfere in the presentations that we will share. And let's start. This Knowledge Cafe focus on transition to life in the community. I stress again that transition means that we have not arrived to comply with the duty that all of us and the state has to guarantee the right of every person with disabilities to live independently and be supported in the community and for their inclusion in the community, fully participating in equal basis than the others in the community. That transition sometimes start from an institution or sometimes start from a family system that doesn't allow the persons with disability to enjoy fully their rights. That's also a fact. That transition can start when, and will start definitively when each bed in an institution that becomes free will be not considered anymore one resource for the system to support other people. We come from the old scheme medical approach that thinks that many people with disabilities needs to be supported. This special settlement, a special institutionalized life to solve their problems, and that's not true. That's absolutely something that we have to combat. We have to fight against that idea and to spread the idea of there is a human right, the right to live independently and be included in the society. But there are still a lot of barriers, as Jim's mentioned. But barriers to ensure that right to everybody that needs support, not just accessibility to the environment, also support to develop their life and to be included. We will focus on that and what are the facts that will improve and accelerate this transition. And we hope to see soon the flowers that from these seeds of the fighting for the rights of self-advocates, of managing services, from the people that we will talk from this approach, or from the advocacy at international level that organizations like EASPD, but also Inclusion Europe are doing. We are fighting for the same. I will give the floor to our first speaker. First speaker is Laszlo Berse. Is a self-advocate, but at the same time, I want to stress that he's Vice President of Inclusion Europe. And I'm sure that he has a lot of things to share with us, to share this knowledge about the issue that we want to treat. Laszlo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Kedves résztvevők, kedves kollégák! Szeretném megköszönni a meghívást. Megtisztelő számomra, hogy részt vettek ebben a fontos beszélgetésben.
Dear participants, dear colleagues, I would like to thank you for inviting me. It is a great honor for me to be part of this important conversation.
Először is szeretnék nektek elmesélni egy történetet arról, hogy miért fontos számunkra az önálló életvitel.
Firstly, I would like to tell you a story about why independent living is necessary for us.
A munkám részeként sok intézményben jártam már. Az egyik intézmény menet közvetlenül volt egy focipálya, megkérdeztem néhány lakót, hogy szeretik-e a futballt, és hogy meg szokták nézni a meccseket.
As part of my work, I have visited many institutions. One of the institutions had a football court right next door. I asked some of the residents if they liked football and if they went to see the game sometimes.
Azt válaszolták, hogy nagyon szeretik a focit. Nem szoktak kimenni a pályához, de ha jó helyen állnak az intézmény udvarán, akkor pont látják a meccset a szomszédban.
They said they liked football very much. They did not go to see the games, but if they stood in the right place in the garden of the institution, they could see the game going on next door.
Azt hiszem, ez nagyon jól leírja, mit jelent a szegregáció, és hogy miért akarunk önállóan élni.
I think that describes very well what segregation means and why we want to live independently.
Úgy akarunk élni, mint bárki más. Mit is akarunk? Új dolgokat tanulni, dolgozni, hogy legyen hobbink, hogy legyenek barátaink, döntéseket hozni, és hogy mi irányítsuk a saját életünket.
We want to live like anyone else. We want to learn new things, to work, to have hobbies, to have friends, to make decisions, and to control our own lives.
Azt akarjuk, hogy befogadjanak minket. Részt akarunk venni a helyi közösségekben. Az országunk és Európa aktív állampolgárai akarunk lenni.
We want to be included. We want to be part of our local communities. We want to be active citizens of our countries and Europe.
Ahhoz, hogy önállóan tudjunk élni, szükségünk van sok különböző szolgáltatásra. Szükségünk van komplex támogató hálózatra.
In order to live independently, we need many different services. We need complex networks of support.
Fontos, hogy kapjunk formális támogatást az államtól vagy más szolgáltatóktól, és informális támogatást családunktól, barátainktól és munkatársainktól.
We need to have formal support by the state or other service providers and informal support by our families, friends, and colleagues.
Sorry.
A munkáról szóló részén.
Pillanat. Igazi munkára van szükségünk, tisztességes fizetésért. A jó szolgáltatások sokba kerülnek.
We need real work for a fair payment. Good quality services can cost a lot.
Pillanat, Tibi, csak elment a szöveg.
Just a second, please.
Hol tartottunk, Tibi? Egyéni költségvetésre van szükségünk, hogy kiválaszthassuk számunkra a legjobb szolgáltatásokat.
We need personal budgets to be able to choose the best services for us.
Döntési lehetőségekre van és szükségünk van, hogy kiválaszthassuk számunkra a legjobb szolgáltatásokat.
We need a choice to choose services for ourselves.
Könnyen érthető tájékoztatásra van szükségünk a különböző szolgáltatásokról.
We need easy to understand information about the different services.
És amit tettnek értünk a szolgáltatók és az államok? Meg kell előzni, hogy a fogyatékossággal élő emberek intézményekbe kerüljenek. A saját lakóhelyükön kell támogatni a fogyatékos embereket és családjaikat.
And what can service providers and states do for us? They should prevent people with disabilities from moving into institutions. They should support people with disabilities and their families in their own places of residence.
Támogatni kell a fogyatékossággal élő embereket, hogy felkészüljenek az önálló életre.
They should support people with disabilities to be prepared to live independently.
Támogatni kell a helyi közösségeket, hogy befogadják a fogyatékossággal élő embereket.
They should support communities to include people with disabilities.
A segítő szakembereket is képezni kell, hogy jobban támogassák a fogyatékossággal élő embereket.
They should train support workers to better support people with disabilities.
A szolgáltatások tervezésénél és nyújtásánál egyéni igényekre kell koncentrálni.
They should focus on personal needs when planning and providing services.
A szolgáltatások tervezésébe és ellenőrzésébe be kell vonni a fogyatékos embereket.
They should involve people with disabilities in planning and monitoring services.
A magas támogatási szükségletű embereket mindig figyelembe kell venni a szolgáltatások tervezésénél és nyújtásánál.
They should always consider people with complex needs when planning and providing services.
Természetesen a különböző országok különböző lépéseknél tartsanak kiváltási folyamatban és az önálló életvétel támogatásában.
Of course, different countries are at different stages of deinstitutionalization and supporting independent living.
Azt gondolom, hogy az európai országoknak közös iránymutatásra van szükségük. Szerencsére van már ilyen közös európai útmutató, az országoknak használnunk is kellene ezt.
I think that European countries need common guidelines, and fortunately, the common European guidelines already exist. Countries should use it.
Sajnos vannak olyan országok, ahol a kiváltás során egyforma lakások épülnek, egyforma bútorokkal és egyforma szolgáltatásokkal, ahol nem az egyéni igényre fókuszálnak.
Unfortunately, there are countries where uniform houses are built with uniform furniture and uniform services, where they do not focus on personal needs.
Pedig a célnak ugyanaz kell, hogy legyen mindenhol, a fogyatékossággal élő emberek önálló életvétel és teljes befogadása.
But goals should be the same everywhere: independent living and full inclusion of people with disabilities.
Az Európai Uniónak és az ENSZ-nek erősebb ellenőrző eszközöket kell bevetniük. Támogatni kell a tagállamokat, hogy jobban tudják megvalósítani a kiváltást.
The European Union and the UN needs to introduce stronger monitoring mechanisms. They should support member states to better carry out the institutionalization.
A koronavírus hatással volt az életünk minden területére, így az önálló életvételre is.
The coronavirus affected all aspects of our lives, including independent living.
Ismét nagyon láthatóvá tette a szegregációt.
It made segregation once again very visible.
Megnehezítette a szolgáltatások működését, és sokan nem kapták meg a szükséges támogatást.
It made the functioning of services very difficult, so many people did not get the support they needed.
Sokan elvesztették a munkájukat. Fennáll a veszélye, hogy nem tudják kifizetni a szükséges szolgáltatásokat.
Many people lost their jobs. There was a risk that they could not pay for services.
A koronavírus azt is megmutatta, hogy a szolgáltatóknak kell, hogy legyen vészhelyzet terve. Felkészültnek kell lenniük egy újabb járványra, vagy más vészhelyzetekre.
The coronavirus also showed that service providers need to have emergency plans. They need to be prepared for another pandemic or other emergencies.
A koronavírus ismét megmutatta, amit már régóta tudtunk. Az intézményeket minél előbb be kell zárni. A fogyatékossággal élő embereknek más szolgáltatásokra van szükségük, hogy önállóan tudjanak élni.
The coronavirus showed us again what we have known for a long time. Institutions have to be closed as soon as possible. People with disabilities need different services to live independently.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm a figyelmet.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laszlo. A very well summarized introduction to the issue in this panel. It's easy to see that Laszlo knows very well what we are talking about, and that what means not to enjoy this right of the inclusion, this human right of live independently and be included in the society, and how strong is still the vulneration of rights around the persons that are still institutionalized in Europe. Our second speaker will be Natalia Kojokaru. She comes from Keystone, Moldova, one organization very active and leading a process of DI, the institutionalization in Moldova, and providing support to many persons with disabilities to be included in the community. Natalia, the floor is yours and you can start when you want. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And it is a great honor for me to present Keystone Moldova's experience. And I will try to share a short presentation just to support my speech. Let me know, please, if you can see it.
Perfect. We can see it perfectly, Natalia.
Okay. Okay. So as I previously said, I will be presenting the experience of Keystone Moldova in supporting and promoting independent living for persons with disabilities. We as an organization do it through various areas of intervention, and I will be presenting a short outlook for each of them. The first one is through legal framework and policy development. So Keystone Moldova provides technical assistance to various institutions responsible for legal and normative framework development in the field of the rights of persons with disabilities. And as an organization, we make sure the independent living provisions are envisaged in the legal and policy framework where it is appropriate. In this regard, I can mention several of them which are ongoing at this moment. These are the law on social inclusion of persons with disabilities, the national program on social inclusion of persons with disabilities, the national program on deinstitutionalization, inclusive education methodologies, some regulations and quality standards for community living services, and so on and so on. Another area of intervention is the institutionalization and community services development. In this regard, Keystone Moldova provides technical assistance to central and local public authorities in DI or prevention of institutionalization, with a particular focus on independent living for persons with disabilities, again, when it is appropriate based on their abilities and needs. And other area of intervention is technical assistance to local and central public authorities in the development of community services for persons with disabilities. And again, every time when we provide support, we advocate for independent living when it is appropriate for persons with disabilities, I mean, based on their capacities and needs. And another area of intervention is the direct assistance to persons with disabilities and their families according to their individual needs in independent living. In this regard, we use various, let's say, tools, such as person-centered planning, development of self-care abilities, support with accessing mainstream community services, providing social assistance to persons with disabilities when needed, psychological counseling, legal assistance, healthcare reference, positive behavior development, and many other types of support as per their individual needs. Another important area of intervention is labor inclusion and economic empowerment. In this regard, Keystone Moldova provides different types of support, and these are employment needs assessment of persons with disabilities, support with vocational training, support with job identification. We also get involved in job matching and support during the probation period for those who intend to get employed. Preparing the environment for the employment of persons with disabilities, meaning working directly with other people employed at the job place, and not only. And not the least, we also provide support to persons with disabilities with money management, because this, based on our experience, is a huge issue, since lots of persons with disabilities from their childhood were not habilitated with money management, and we have to do it from the scratch when working in this regard. Another important piece of work is focused on advocacy and self-advocacy. So Keystone Moldova supports self-advocates, meaning persons with disabilities, intellectual disabilities in particular, to advocate for different human rights. And independent living is one of the rights self-advocates advocate for. In this regard, I included here several examples. First of all, Keystone Moldova empowers persons with disabilities in terms of their rights, claiming their rights, and the independent living is one of these issues for empowerment. Coming back to the examples, I included here several of them, like participation of self-advocates in the decision-making process at the national level. In particular, participation of persons with disabilities in public consultations of the National Program on Social Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities, where they made sure that independent living is included in the policy document. Another example is participation of self-advocates in the conference of the state parties to the UNCRPD. Back into 2019, one of the self-advocates had a speech. The main focus of her speech was the institutionalization and community living and the importance of independent living for persons with disabilities. Another example is advocacy at the local level. Keystone Moldova supports several groups of self-advocates at the local level. And here is one of the examples when they approach the local authorities advocating for accessible public infrastructure, as we believe that this is one of the preconditions for independent living for persons with disabilities. Another important example of self-advocacy is when young men, in particular men, because Keystone Moldova started with the institutionalization of men from the residential care facilities. So when the young men who used to have experience of living in institution for decades have been assisted by Keystone Moldova and deinstitutionalized and included in the community social services. Later on, for instance, one of the guy you can see on these pictures, later on he got married, he has his own family, and he's currently living independently. And what they did with Keystone Moldova support, they went to the, or visited residential care facilities and tried to convince by their own examples that independent living is not something unreal. The reason for going into institutions was that people who still stayed in the institutions, many of them didn't want to leave these care facilities, being convinced that if they go outside the institution, the life is finished. So they will not have any support, they will stay on streets, they will die from hunger, if I may say so. And this self-advocates with the previous experience of living in an institution brought their own examples of this transition from institution to independent living. And I want to say that it was really a success because he was one of the people those in institutions knew of. So he was he could convince other people that it is possible based on his own experience. Another tool we use to promote independent living is through the complaint mechanism. So it's a hotline service mainly, and a hotline service where persons with disabilities, and not only persons with disabilities, families, service providers, and anyone who wants, but mainly this is a hotline service for persons with disabilities. So they can call this complaint mechanism and not only speak about some infringements of the rights, but they can also obtain information regarding, I don't know, various community services, mainstream services in the community, some financial benefits, how to make the disability degree documentation, and so on and so on and so on. They can also be assisted by some psychologists because the complaint mechanism also offers psychological support. So yes, this is a tool Keystone Moldova uses to support and promote independent living inter alia for persons with disabilities. One of the other tools is the capacity building. Keystone Moldova is convinced that ongoing trainings and capacity building activities in general are needed. Capacity building of activities for different target groups in order to support and promote independent living of persons with disabilities. We perform various capacity building activities such as trainings, on-the-job learning, mentoring, coaching, creation and support of networks, peer support, and others. And of course, we work with different target groups, from persons with disabilities to community services providers, to mainstream services providers, mass media, and so on and so on. And last but not the least, area of intervention is through awareness raising, because we strongly believe that it is important to show to other people, both persons with disabilities and persons without disabilities, that community living is important, that independent living, is important, independent living is possible, and we use various awareness raising tools as an organization to promote independent living. We have a lot of success stories which can show how independent living is possible for persons with disabilities. So this was mainly what I wanted to present. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also because you are using your time with a lot of efficiency. Normal when it comes from a service provider that has to use with their time with efficiency to comply with all the targets and goals that you, as a Keystone Moldova, you have fixed. We will go to the third vision about the same issue. We have seen how a person considers a self-advocate demands for persons with disabilities, for himself too, how the demands to change the society to enable this right to independent living, how from a service provider, but at the same time, one organization that is actively pushing to change the system, to enable new legislation, to enable new financial frameworks to ensure that the right to live independently arrives to everybody, not just to the people that has one economical capacity to afford the cost of the services, but for everybody. And now we are going from Moldova to another part of Europe, and to see the perspective of Cesarela Nicoleta Predescu from ProAct Support in Hungarian. She will provide us another aspect about how to tackle with this issue. Go ahead, Nicoleta. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to the Knowledge Coffee and on inclusion living. I am glad and I am honored to be here with all of you. And I am going to talk a little bit about ProAct Support, which is an organization, a Romanian NGO established in 2011, whose main goal is to promote the institutionalization. That means we are working with people being in residential care, mostly people with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities, while we create community-based services. Please allow me to give you a little bit about the context we are operating in. In Romania, there are over 16,000 people with intellectual disabilities in residential care, and most of them are living in old-fashioned, isolated facilities together with other 200, 300 people in the same place. As you can imagine, the conditions are not adequate and people's rights are broken. Due to the European Union pressure and the constant attention given by the international community, anyway, Romania has started to pay attention to the situation of institutionalized people. Thus, some new legislation appears, and the entire residential care system have been in process of restructuring and reorganizing. That means institution with more than 200, 300 people must be redimensioned into small institution with no maximum than 50 people inside. Some of the major public services providers started to develop protected living as a way to promote the institutionalization and help people to be moved from this large institution in community protected living. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, in essence, protected living is the same with residential care, but at a small scale. Because mainly people life is decided by the staff of the service, of the protected living service, because people do not have control over their life, because some of the rules are just imported from or transferred from the residential care into the protected living. Some stupid rules like if people are unhappy in the house, there is a complaining box and they should write a letter and put the letter in the complaining box. Or if they want to eat, there is a schedule when to eat, and in the standard it's mentioned you have to have 3 meals per day. So it's not about what people wanted to cook and buy and to have lunch whenever they wanted to have. It's about having 3 meals per day. Or if they wanted to have a friend coming in their house and staying over the night, guess what? They have to develop like a schedule, a kind of visiting program, which is open usually during the weekend. And examples could continue. The other one is if you want to develop a community, a protected living, you are obliged also to develop a daycare center. And another condition is that protected living, it's not for everybody. It's just for people having a job. So the only candidates for living in protected living are people working, having a job. And as I said, examples could continue, which is stupid because we are not talking about real community living. We are talking about smaller institution because you know, the institution, it's not defined only by the numbers of people living inside. You could have an institution with 2 people if you follow the rules which I just mentioned before. In this context, ProAct struggled to develop community-based services, and we are currently running 12 community services where at this moment there are 54 people with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities, mostly with severe disabilities. And for us as a private social service providers, the biggest and the difficult job is to give people a house, not a service with rules and with limits, which it's very difficult. I mean, we have to find a balance because in one hand, we are a social service provider. Our services must be licensed by the Romanian government. But on the other hand, we have people living in their house. And it's very difficult because in ProAct services, people have control over their life. They have personalized budget. They decide when they wanted to go outside, when they wanted to come, with whom. They are allowed, of course, to come with friends, to stay over the nights, to have meals when they wanted to have it, during the night, during the morning. It's just their wish. But that means for us as a social service provider, broke lots of rules which are right now in place. And this forces us to provide services at the grassroots level, but also to work to impact and to change public policies. That's why we are working in close relationship with the national authority, trying to change the quality standards in place, trying to create real community-based services, and trying to reduce the difference which exists now for people living in residential care, where they receive all range of services, counseling, psychotherapy, physiotherapy, all kind of services they need. And if these people would like tomorrow to start a new life in community, the support is cut, which is unfair because this system is built to encourage people to go and to choose residential care because there are lots of services. Plus, the community are not yet prepared to support the institutionalization process because there are no services created at the community level. That's why we are working with the government, with the National Authority for Disabled People, to push local authority to create services, to change the standards, and finally, to create a vision, because this is what we lack very much. We do not have a vision with regard of deinstitutionalization and what means community-based services. Fortunately, we have political will. We have people with power in the position and who wanted to promote the institutionalization, and they do their best. The problem is that they don't have a vision. And we have to work now to create this vision, a common vision in respect of people with disabilities, and to promote Article 19, the rights of people to live in the community. So we need friends and ally, to help us to change something and create that common vision to support people to live, as any citizen in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicoleta. I'm sorry because I say you were Hungarian and you work in Romania. You work very hard and very well in one environmental where, as you have said, still there is a lack of vision, and maybe institutionalization is so strong that doesn't enable people to imagine another possibilities. This is the pity, but is the situation where in many countries of Europe we are facing. Still, there is a lack of vision, there is a lack of imagination to imagine that there are lives that could be lived completely in the community if there is one system that provides them individualized, global, flexible, self-directed support. This is the moment to give the floor to Milan Zvereva. Milan works from another perspective. Knows very well what happens in the field, in the realities that has been described till now, but at the same time try to change the things from the lobby and advocacy at international level, managing and being the director of Inclusion Europe. Milan, what we have to do to, at the end, ensure that everybody has the right to live independent and be included in the community, and we don't use that word of transition because we were dealing with conflicts, that there will be conflicts when everybody will be living in the community, but will be the normal conflicts that everybody has having a disability. What have we to do to change the things, Milan?
Just do it, I think. It's the most important thing. Now, anyway, thank you for the invite. I will basically just follow on what Laszlo was saying about the role of service providers and let's say the expectations of people who rely on support. So I guess I'll mostly bring home some of the messages around three brief points. One is what should be the focus of support, and it should be relationships. Every support should always start with making itself work for people with complex support needs. And the last point that I will make is about the language that we use and how we frame these conversations, including the conversation today. So on the first one, we in briefly basically summarize with the words build relationships, not houses. And of course, people need a place to live. So that's not anything against houses as a solution for housing. It's about what should be the focus of support. And it should be the person with its social relations, its social roles. Every person, every human being, we have different roles in society. We are a professional of some kind. We are a brother, sister, father, son, daughter. We are friends to people. And that is what every support needs to use as a cornerstone of what it is doing for a person, to help them be in these different roles that humans usually have, to help a person to be part of a family, to help a person to be part of a workplace, like Laszlo was saying, to help a person to be able to go and have a coffee somewhere, or drink a beer, or play football, again, to refer back to Laszlo's opening picture. That should be the true focus of every support that people are receiving, to build the relations that people can rely on, also for the purpose that they shouldn't only rely on service provider as a social care service to receive everything in their lives, so they can have, like all of us, just rely in some extent to friends, families, things in our lives. The second point is about every support that is being made available should be available to people with complex support needs. And we see it over and over again that these are people that are often left out of the institutionalization programs, of services that are called independent living and provided as independent living. Very often, the concept of a service as of independent living service is from the beginning construed as not applicable to people with complex support needs. And this must change as well. And every service must be done with them in mind, also for the purpose that I firmly believe that if we can make the services work for people with complex support needs, then they will work for everybody. So that should be the starting point for every support provision. And then the last point on the language and on framing of the conversations. Of course, very often the issue is the term independent living itself. Many people tend to think that this means that that person is living independent, as in isolated, without any support, on their own. And that's, of course, is not the case. Independent means as in independent in being able to make decisions about the person's own life, about one's own life, independent that it's not depending on one service provider, one place to, and all of that. It doesn't mean, and that is often misconstrued like that, it doesn't mean being independent of support of others. So that one important thing. Another one, and then as a slight dig at this event as well, I think is about not thinking about people as service users or branding them service users, but thinking of them and treating them just as humans, as I was referring back to the relations. And that's not just a point that we keep repeating for repeating's sake. It's a point that goes back to what service needs to be doing. And it needs to be supporting person to be a person, to have human relations, to have normal social roles like everybody else. And that's why it matters to get away with the word service user, but think of people and present people as people, as their normal social roles that they have. And one last remark on language, of course, often, again, going back to the independent content, we often hear the phrase that person is or isn't, that we hear more often, to live able to live independendly or ready to live independently. And those are, of course, complete nonsense. Just the phrases that need also to be taken away from the vocabulary that is being used. It is similar to the, like, because being the concept of living independently is not about having some specific independent living skills, very often construed as kind of housekeeping skills or cooking and things like that. It is about, as I said, having social relations, having the normal social roles that we as humans have. And that is something that is that develops constantly. So there is not one moment when we are just ready. So to summarize, of course, there is nothing new that I said on this subject. There's nothing new that Laszlo said on this subject, and I don't mean it as a to dismiss what Laszlo was saying. It was very relevant. My point being here that we already know what people need. People with disabilities and their organizations have been saying this forever. we also know how to do these things. There are so many very good policies and very good practices and very good service provisions for which we can learn, which can be followed, so they become available to everybody. And it's not like a good practice lottery as it is today. So the real question here is, what is the excuse for many service providers, for governments, not to do it available, not to make it available to everyone? And with that, again, to summarize and to follow up on Laszlo's call and what services should be doing, I think the focus should definitely be on building social roles and social relationships for people so they can function in the society like everybody else does. And that should be the main focus of services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the attendants can send questions to the chat or ask for intervening directly if they want to interpel our colleagues. I can suggest some questions, because starting by the end, when Milan says, what is the excuse? Sometimes the excuse is that the money that is sent to some kind of institutionalized service, it's impossible to use in another service. And I have a lot of examples. For example, myself, we are supporting individuals that live in the community, and the maximum that they can receive to receive personalized support that is needed to manage some aspects of their life, because they don't have this natural environment where to supply all that, is around 400 euros per month. It's limited by the law, but the same person giving up and saying, well, okay, if the system wants, I will accept to go to a residential facility, the same person will cost to the state around 2,000 euros. That has no sense. That has no sense because the person doesn't want to live there, and we as the supporters, we don't want that the person lives there. But the pipeline of the money is still being sent to this kind of residential and institutionalized settings. Changing policies, changing ways of provide support and to fund this support is basic if we want to change the system. Then, when that happens, when we have more personalized approach to identify with the person and the environment what must be supplied by the state in terms of funding, in terms of services, then will be easier to identify the service that don't want to evolve. But now in many countries, there are still policies that doesn't allow providing individualized services to the person that needs. I agree absolutely that when the environment or the person provides these good relations, there is a less dependence on formal services. But our communities has evolved from a system that has thought that the state can provide and can solve all. The welfare state has created this fake idea that everything could be solved by a public policy. And we know now, we are discovering again that communities is the key question, and enforce the communities will be the only way to afford the growing needs of support, because the evolution and the aging of the population, for example. All that questions can be put in and can be shared with our speakers that has made very nice interventions. And I open to the public if they have something to comment or to ask to our speakers. I'm sorry, because if the people don't make questions, I will ask the public. And Constantina, go ahead. You have the
Yes, thank you very much all for your presentations today. It was really inspiring to hear all of your work and your thoughts, and very inspiring also to hear Laszlo's experience. Something that I was wondering is, and this question of course goes to all, but mainly also to Laszlo and Milan. You mentioned that through your, as part of your work, you're also visiting institutions and you have experience from different countries. So I was wondering whether you have an example that you can share with us of a policy that can that has been implemented in a country and that can facilitate independent living of persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
Laszlo or Milan?
Yes, thank you. Igen, mindenképpen az ENSZ egyezmény iránymutatást útra tesz, hogy mi alapján kéne az intézeteket kitagolni. És ugye erről szól az egész, hogy minél több lakást kéne létrehozni. Thank you.
I think that the UNCRPD is in itself enough of a policy which describes that we need these services to support independent living of people with disabilities.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe just to add to that, of course, there are tons of practices around the world available on this, both, let's say, in the policy area or in actual service provision on the level of individual organizations. But what is important is that the principles that they are based on, and they are mostly based on what Laszlo was describing in his opening presentation. That is a focus on individuals' needs. It's a focus on involvement of the people who receive the service in the decision making about it. And those are the things that need to be at least enabled, if not, of course, actively facilitated and supported by the law and national policies as well.
We have one hand raised, Tim Claro.
Thank you. I'm Tim Claro. I work for SOM. It's an employers federation based in Flanders, Belgium. Being a person with a disability myself, I'm very much convinced about the fact that the deinstitutionalization is important. I want to bring on, I want to elaborate a bit more on the thing that Laszlo said earlier. I think it's very important for good monitoring tools, because in my opinion, we have the UNCRPD, we have a lot of text about deinstitutionalization, but it's still a concept that is misunderstood by a lot of people, even professionals. There's not some good tool to assess whether a system in place in a given country is on the right track for deinstitutionalization or not. I think that's one of the main issues, I guess. One other thing that I want to, one other important thing is, in my opinion, it's also deinstitutionalization is more difficult in a country where a lot of individual policies are working alongside each other and there's not much integration. I think that's also policy integration is a very important and keystone for independent deinstitutionalization. I see on a daily basis that policy makers are working alongside each other with different visions, and that's also a difficulty to overcome when it comes to deinitialization. So monitoring is one thing, policy integration is another thing, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Tim. Other hands raised? Not? I can see people that this is, for example, the people from Plain Incursión, they are demanding to say something, but they don't make the step. Lo estoy viendo, o sea que.
Hola, estamos aquí. Está Ana conectada y yo voy a ser la persona que va a ayudarla a comunicarse en inglés, ¿vale?
Adelante.
Sí.
Hello. Vale. Que es muy importante la vida independiente. Yo al principio y la vida independiente con apoyos. Vale.
Okay. So Anna is saying that for her it's very important to talk about independent life and support. It's really important to talk about supports.
Que los apoyos al principio, pueden ser constantes, pero con el tiempo pueden acabar desapareciendo.
So at the beginning, it can be very constant to having support, but with the time, it can happen and sometimes they disappear.
Yo vivía con apoyos y mis apoyos están ahí, pero ya no tengo tengo referentes, pero no son constantes.
Before, she had a lot of support. They have a really constant support, and with the time now, she doesn't have a constant support. She now have referent people, but not a constant support.
Y que también hay que luchar por las personas con grandes necesidades de apoyo para que puedan vivir independientemente, sin vivir en las instituciones.
And so it's really important to fight for the people with big support necessities so they can be disinstitutionalized as well.
Very interesting points by Ana. Muchas gracias, Ana. Buena intervención. And it's true, in my personal experience, when we 18 years ago start to empty a large institution in mental health in Girona, in Catalonia, where I live, with 500 people living there. And we started, the first decision was, of course, don't admit nobody else. And for many people, the idea was, well, but all the cost, the public cost and expenses, and all the support they receive here will be needed in the community. How will we address the needs of support? And we discovered that in many cases, that is just one appearance. It's not real. It's not real because these growing relations that the person, when he's actively in the community, starts and develop, supports the become real supports without an extra cost for anybody. And Anna is one example. She said that at the beginning needs a lot of support, but then developing their skills and with social relations that she has created needs less formal support. And that's a fact, and a fact that is far from the views of many politicians when design policies on the eye. We have a lot of examples of heavy in terms of weight of paper plans of the institutionalization that then don't becomes real policies and changes in lives. I will, if nobody else wants to intervene, I can ask other people that appears in my screen. Take care, because when I say, I do it. Teresa, you are smiling. That means you have something to say. And you know that I point and I ask.
Thank you, Pepe. Oh, hello, everyone. I'm Portuguese. I'm from Portugal, and we are trying a new project, a pilot project on independent living. We are in the third year, giving personal assistance to persons with disabilities. And it is till now a great success. But we don't know what will happen when this pilot project ends. So we are forcing our government to go on with it. I would like to say, Milan, you said something, it is very important, that living independently is not about skills. This is so important, but here in Portugal we have this idea. Independent living is for a small group of persons which have self-advocacy, etc. So it is very important, and we have also here in Portugal different visions, and we need to grow. So it is very good to be sharing with you these ideas and hear about your experience. Thank you. It's not a question, just a comment, Pep.
Thank you, Teresa. It's true, there are a lot of pilot projects, and how to extend the pilot projects to everybody that needs to be benefited from these projects.
If I can briefly just follow up on it. Thank you very much for highlighting that part of what I said. I think it is incredibly important element of this, and that comment goes back to when I was working in Czechia and elsewhere on the institutionalization, where exactly in the let's say early stages, and we can see it in many other places, the focus would be on how can we teach these people to cook and clean their flat and do this and do that, so then they can live independently. And that if we cannot teach them, or if they don't, if there are other reasons why this is not possible, they are okay, independent living is not for them. And that, of course, is completely not a good way of thinking about it, to put it diplomatically. So yeah, definitely, it's an incredibly important element not to frame independent living as some sort of a household skill that can be acquired like this. It's of course it's a set of skills, but completely different ones, set of skills that we acquire throughout our life, basically through socializing, being with others, that we constantly improve by interacting with others, and that should be the main focus of all this work. That's what I just meant to say by that. So thank you for kind of highlighting that, and I will also use it to plug in one thing that is very relevant to what we are saying is, and was published just as we sit here, and I posted it on the chat here. There's a new podcast on Inclusion Europe Radio where I talked to Julie Beadle-Brown and Jan Šiška about exactly this topic, the institutionalization, how to support it, how service provision is related to quality of life. So I'll plug that work of Inclusion Europe here, and I think you should listen to that as well. Thank you.
If there is no other intervention, I will ask the participant if they have some kind of hope in the developments that the new European strategy for the rights of persons with disability established in terms of released from the EU institutions a guideline to the states on how to deal with deinstitutionalization processes and develop community-based services and service that connects the person with the community in terms of on providing them support. Do you think we are close to a new paper on that kind of policies, or will we see, apart from papers, something in the reality coming from this strategy? Maybe the question can start with the persons from Romania, and not exactly from Moldova, that is still far from the EU, but maybe can benefit from cooperation policies. But our friend from Romania, do you think that this kind of instruments that are included in the strategy can help us in the reality, in the daily life?
Actually, we release a new strategy on disability. We just approved a new strategy available for the next period of time. And inside of the strategy, there is a point on deinstitutionalization and the development of community-based services. Right now, there is a working group at a high level, which the group is dealing with developing a kind of plan of action, how to put in practice the deinstitutionalization, what kind of instruments, what kind of methods, how can we evaluate people in institution and develop the necessary range of services in order to help people to move from the institution into the community. We are at the very, very beginning of this process. We do not have experience, and we do not have a clear idea how to do it. I know that the World Bank, it's very much involved in this, and I saw here in chat that Julie Bedell-Brown, I know that she also will be somehow involved. And Romania right now is looking for models, for experiences in the institutionalization. And I will take this opportunity to ask EASPD to maybe to recommend us some service providers who were involved in the institutionalization, or maybe some good practices be followed, or to inspire Romania how to do this. Because, as I said before, we have political will, we have people, the decision maker people wanted, they are in favor of this, but honestly, we don't know how to do it. So any models, any recommendation, any resources would be very much helpful and appreciated in this respect.
Thank you, and of course from EASPD and the member for inclusive living that I'm co-chairing, we can provide you these examples of models, and we have tried to introduce these examples or models in projects like, for example, the Greek strategy on DI that has been released last year, and we have collaborated with the Greek government technically. And of course there are, but means changing a scheme, and it's not comfortable sometimes. But of course there are, and there are thinking in this last step that Milan has mentioned before, the creation good relations. But when somebody has been in an institution for years, these relations at the beginning doesn't exist, and the service must supply that connection with the environment and then build relations, and not from the first day. Jim, you have your hand raised.
Yes, hello again. I wondered if our colleague from Keystone, Natalia, could perhaps, and other panel members could say what they think are the most important things that service providers could do to help in taking forward real independent living.
Well, from my point of view, one of the most important things is to be aware of the needs a person with disabilities has and to listen to the needs of the person with disabilities, to what is important for a person with disabilities and how to respond to these needs. It is important for a service provider to understand the needs and to know how to respond to these needs of a persons with disabilities. And these are different, starting from some, I don't know, starting from what a person wants, what kind of services a person wants, mainstream services a person wants to access, how to get into the community, how to access other people, how to communicate with them, and so on and so on. So another important issue for a service provider is to know how to link the service to the community and to mainstream services in the community, and how to include this person in this liaison, if I may say so. Another important issue is for a service provider is to be able to manage a research. When I say service provider, I do not refer only to people working within the service, but service provider as at the community level, I mean at the district level, for instance. And here again, it is important to know how to mobilize different resources, including financial and human resources, in order to support persons with disabilities within community care services. Mm-hmm.
Good point. Good point. This connection. First, listen. First, be service providers must be focused on the individual, not about the group of people with the same characteristics. Apparently, each person is important, and every single person must have his individualized plan of support based on their needs and preferences and what the person wants. And that's the key point. Then sometimes service must become a complementary advocate. We don't have to consider every single individual with disabilities living independently a hero. The people don't want to be heroes, want to live. But sometimes to fight against all that barriers that are present in many lives, persons needs this support, and support can come from service providers too. Support to break these barriers that other mainstream services sometimes introduce and don't allow the person to participate and use that mainstream services, training, employment inclusion, health, housing, etc. Sometimes the services has barriers that the person alone cannot overcome. Other words, we are arriving to the end.
And maybe just briefly on that also. I think, of course, there's a lot of stuff that can be learned from countries that are implementing the institutionalization on a large scale. And that could be an example to Nicoletta was asking about. One of them, of course, would be Czechia, that's one of the countries that actually I think does most of the institutionalization programs at the moment, both in services for people, for adults with disabilities. There's some progressive work also for children, but also for mental health reform. So there's a lot of work that has been done there, resulting in thousands of people benefiting and moving out from segregated institutions. There are practical tools made there. And it's just one example. There are many people and tools that are available. There are management tools for the strategic levels that can be applied. There are tools for individual service providers. So my point being that if you would be interested, we could also help you make connections with people who are involved directly in making the transition or have done that in recent years and can share this experience from the countries that to some extent also share the, let's say, the societal and legal and cultural background in this sense. So anyway, that was my last point here to just to offer this. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Milan. And it's true, there are experiences, sometimes not generalized, not complete, don't arrive still to everybody, but there are experiences. And what we cannot let that the society understand that is not possible. We have to fight against that idea with all our power, with all together, fighting against the idea that some people cannot live in the community, cannot be included because their characteristics. That's absolutely bad idea that comes from the old scheme of considering the persons with disabilities, and we know that it's not true. It's not true, and at the same time, there are human rights that supports the opposite idea. And against human rights, of course, there are still a lot of energy and barriers in many aspects of life, but human rights defenders must be active every day to try to achieve that human rights scheme of life. Thank you very much to all the attendants, and we are arriving to the end. We will release one summary of one report about everything has been said here, and I invite you all to follow the activities that from EASPD we are trying to develop in this topic, but not just in this topic, because all the topics are related. In fact, inclusive living will be the result of a lot of transformations that our societies needs. Early intervention to identify needs of persons with disabilities as soon as possible, inclusive education that still is not a reality in many countries, accessibility in all terms, cognitively easy to read, etc. We need more accessible societies. Legal capacity. Legal capacity is related to the right to take decisions and make choices, and the right to fail in your decisions and make mistakes. Access to justice, freedom, and to be included in the community. Work, employment, health, all together is needed to ensure this full right of living independent and be included in the community. If some of these fails, then it's more difficult. And this is why it's not a fight of one issue alone. Also, I use my time to invite you to check on our website about our conference in May. In May, we have a conference about one of the key important things that is employment and work, the right to work, to fulfill this right to be independent and live independent in the community and have a role, an active role. and I hope to see many of you there. I see that there is a hand raised from Plan Inclusion. Is active?
Yes, sorry. Yes, can we say just a little thing? And I want to contribute with some project that we have in Plena Inclusión. Ana, si quieres comentarlo, puedes sacar el micrófono.
Voy. Está. El proyecto se titula se llama Mi Casa y es para la gente con, sobre todo la gente con grandes necesidades de apoyo, pueda desinstitucionalizarse.
Okay, so Ana is saying that here in Spain, Plena Inclusión have a really big project, and then it's really interesting. It's about this moment where people with big necessities or of support, they are institutionalized and they are going to be in co-housings in the community. So if you want, we can share some information about the project.
It's a very important project, and it's an example of the use of the next generation EU funds to try to overcome this situation of institutionalization and provide opportunities for the people with more intensive support needs to live in the community and to enjoy the community living. Good point, Ana. Has tenido muy buena visión de comentar esto. Well, we expect to see you again in other activities. And if you don't mind, we will close that session. Thank you very much to all the participants, to all the speakers, and the people from EASPD that has supported us in organizing this event. Thank you, and see you soon, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.